Shri Advaita Bhaktivedanta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Priorities. So today we're gonna start from first canto, 13th chapter, 27, verse number 27. I want the devotees should also participate in the book reading session. Uh, so starting few verses I will gonna read, and I request all the devotees to also participate and make it as an interactive session. So Srimad Bhagavatam 1.13.27. Yes, Vakat Parato Viha Jata
Prabhu, could
Nirveda.
you share your
Oh,
screen?
yes, Mataji. Wait a minute. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, is it visible, Mataji?
Yeah.
So, Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, 13th chapter, verse number 27. Yes, Vakat Parato Viha Jata Nirveda Atmavan Riddhi Kritva Harim Yeha Pravarjate Pravarjayat Sa Narottamaha. Translation: He is certainly a first-class man who awakens and understands, either by himself or from others, the falsity and misery of this material world, and thus leaves home and depends fully on the personality of Godhead residing within his heart. Purport: There are three classes of transcendental. There are three classes of transcendentalists, namely the Dhira, or the one who is not disturbed by being away from family association, one in the renounced order of life, a sannyasi by frustrated sentiment, and third one is sincere devotee of the Lord, who awakens God consciousness by hearing and chanting and leaves home depending completely on the personality of Godhead who resides in his heart. The idea is that the renounced order of life, after a frustrated life of sentiment in the material world, may be the stepping stone on the path of self realization, but real perfection of the path of liberation is attained when one is practiced to depend fully on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who lives in everyone's heart as Paramatma. One may live in the darkest jungle alone out of whom, but a steadfast devotee knows very well that he is not alone. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is with him, and he can protect his sincere devotee in any awkward circumstance. One should therefore practice devotional service at home, hearing and chanting the holy name, quality, form, pastimes, entourage, etc., in association with pure devotees, and this practice will help one awaken God consciousness in proportion to one's sincerity of purpose. One who desires material benefit by such devotional activities can never depend on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although he sits in everyone's heart. Nor does the Lord give any direction to the person who worships him for material gain. Such materialistic devotees may be blessed by the Lord with material benefit, but they cannot reach the stage of first class human being as above mentioned. There are many examples of such sincere devotees in the history of the world, especially in India, and they are our guides on the path of self-realization. Mahatma Vidur is one such great devotee of the Lord, and we should all try to follow in his lotus footsteps for self-realization. Okay. अथो धीचिं दिशं यातु स्वैर अज्ञातगतिर्भवान् इतो अर्वाक् प्रयासकालः पुंसां गुण विकर्षण. Sorry, my Sanskrit is very bad. Translation: Please therefore leave for the north immediately without letting your relatives know, for soon the time will approach which will diminish the good qualities of man. So here Vidura is indirectly, telling about the Kali. One can compensate for a life of frustration by becoming a Dhira or leaving home for good without communicating with relatives. And Vidura advised his eldest brother to adopt this way without delay because very quickly the age of Kali was approaching. A conditioned soul is already degraded by the material association, and still in the Kali Yuga, the good qualities of a man will deteriorate to the lowest standard. He was advised to leave home before Kali Yuga approached because the atmosphere which was created by Vidura, his valuable instruction on the facts of life, would fade away due to the influence of the age, which was fast approaching. To become Narottama, or a first class human being depending completely on the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, is not possible for any ordinary man. It is stated in the Bhagavad Gita that that a person who is completely relieved of all taints of sinful acts can alone depend on the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. Dhritarashtra was advised by Vidura at least to become a Dhira in the beginning if it were impossible for him to become a sannyasi or an Narattama. Persistently endeavoring on the line of self-realization helps a person to rise to the condition of Narottama from the stage of a Dhira. The Dhira stage is attained after a prolonged practice of the yoga system, but by the grace of Vidura, one can attain the stage immediately simply by willing to adopt the means of the Dhira stage, which is the preparatory stage for sannyas. The sannyas stage is the preparatory stage of Paramahamsa, or the first great devotee of the Lord. So here Vidura is instructing his eldest brother to leave for the forest and practice devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because the age of Kali is approaching. Today I was hearing Guru Maharaj's lecture where Guru Maharaj was saying that in Kali Yuga, two things only work and protect us. That is, one is Harinam, of course, mantras, and second one is jewels, crystals, or whatever you call it. So Guru Maharaj says that in we should not feel. Of course, this is a leftover age, but by chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, we will achieve the supreme perfection as mentioned by Vidura, Paramahamsa stage. So we should practice our 16 rounds and we should follow four regulative principles. Evam Raja Vidure- Vidurena Anujena Prajnachakshurbodhitah Ajmedah Chitvashveshu Snehapahan Dradimon Dradinamo Nishchakrama Bhradar Sandarshitadva. Translation. Thus Maharaj Dhritarashtra, the speaker of the family of Ajamedha, firmly convinced by the introspective knowledge, Prajna, broke at once the strong network of family affection by his resolute determination. Thus, he immediately left home to set out on the path of liberation, as directed by his younger brother Vidura. Purport. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the great preacher of the principles of Srimad Bhagavatam, has stressed the importance of association with sadhus, pure devotees of the Lord. He said that even by a moment of association with a pure devotee, one can achieve all perfection. We are not ashamed to admit that this fact was experienced in our practical life. Were we not favored by His Divine Grace, Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj? By our first meeting for a few minutes only, it would have been impossible for us to accept this mighty task of describing Srimad Bhagavatam in English without seeing him at that opportune moment. We could have become a very great business magnate, but never would we have been able to walk the path of liberation and be engaged in the factual service of the Lord under instructions of His divine grace. And here is another practical example by the action of Vidura's association with Dhritarashtra. Maharaj Dhritarashtra was tightly bound in a network of material affinities related to politics, economic, and family attachment. And he did everything in his power to achieve so called success in his planned projects, but he was frustrated from the beginning to the end so far as his material activities were concerned. And yet, despite his life of failure, he achieved the greatest of all success in self-realization by the forceful instruction of pure devotee of the Lord, who is a typical emblem of a sadhu. The scripture enjoined, therefore, that one should associate with sadhus only, rejecting all other kinds of association, and by doing so, one will have a ample opportunity to hear the sadhus, who can cut to pieces the bond of illusory affection in the material world. It is a fact that the material world is a great illusion because everything appears to be a tangible reality, but at the next moment evaporates like a dashing foam of the sea or a cloud in the sky. A cloud in the sky undoubtedly appears to be the reality because it rains, and due to rains, so many temporary green things appear, but in the ultimate issue, everything disappears, namely the cloud, rain, green vegetation, all in due course. But the sky remains, and the varieties of the sky or luminaries also remain forever. Similarly, the absolute truth, which is compared to the sky, remains eternally, and the temporary cloud-like illusion comes and goes away. Foolish living beings are attracted by the temporary cloud, but intelligent men are more concerned with the eternal sky with all its variegatedness. So we have to understand that this material world is an illusion, and Guru Maharaj says, I know today Guru Maharaj was saying in the lecture that material world is like a uh, homes in the sky, like uh, आकाश के ऊपर घर बनाना, which is impossible, which is not possible. It's a myth only to get a home on the sky. So Guru Maharaj is saying like the material world is like home on the sky, or horses giving egg. Horses never give egg, and there can be no home on the sky. So we should understand that material world is illusion, and we should repeat these things that we are a soul and we are, this material world is temporary, because Guru Maharaj's repetition is very important. Guru Maharaj also mentions in the Satyuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, just gurus only repeat 3 times one thing, and disciple get realization. But because we are in the age of Kali Yuga, we take time to get realized about such spiritual things, because Suman, our intelligence is weakened with the effect of Kali. So we have to repeat these things. We can make it as affirmations, that I am not the body, I am the soul, I'm the part and parcel of Lord Sri Krishna. I am that, Dasanu Das. So that we have to repeat every day. So we can, someday we can get realization that, yeah, we are not. And this world is actually illusion. Patim pra, pran, Patim Prayantam Subalasya Putri Pativrata Chanuja Gama Sadvihi Himalayam Nyasta Danda Praharsham Manasvinam Evasas Sampraharaha. Translation: The gentle and the cherished Gandhari, who was the daughter of a king Subala of Gandhar or Gandhar, followed her husband, seeing that he was going to the Himalaya mountains, which are the delight of those who have accepted the stuff of the renounced order, like fighters who have accepted a good lashing from the enemy. Perfect. Saubalini or Gandhari, daughter of King Subala and wife of King Dhritarashtra, was ideal as wife devoted to her husband. The Vedic civilization especially prepared chaste and devoted wives, of whom Gandhar is one amongst many mentioned in history. Lakshmi ji Sita Devi was also a daughter of a great king, but she followed her husband, Lord Ramchandra, into the forest. Similarly, as a woman, Gandhari could have remained at home or at her father's house, but as the chaste and gentle lady, she followed her husband without consideration. Instructions for the renowned order of life were imparted to Dhritarashtra by Vidura, and Gandhari was by the side of her husband. But he did not ask her to follow him because he was at that time fully determined, like a great warrior who faces all kind of danger in the battlefield. He was no longer attracted to so-called wives or relatives. He decided to start alone, but as a chaste lady, Gandhari decided to follow her husband till the last moment. Maharaj Dhritarashtra accepted the order of Vanaprastha, and at this stage, the wife is allowed to remain as a voluntary servitor. But in the sannyas stage, no wife can stay with her former husband. A sannyasi is considered to be a dead man civilly, and therefore the wife became a civil widow without connection with her former husband. Maharaj Dhritarashtra did not deny his faithful wife, and she followed her husband on at, at her own risk. The sannyasis accept a rod as a sign of the renounced order of life. There are two types of sannyasis: those who are followed the Mayavadi philosophy headed by Sripad Sankaracharya accepted only one rod, Ekadanda, but those who follow the Vaishnavite philosophy accept three combined rods, Tridanda. The Mayavadi sannyasis are Ekadandi Swamis, whereas the Vaishnava sannyasis are known as the Tridandi Swamis. More distinctly, Tridandi Goswamis. In order to be distinguished from the Mayavadi philosopher, the Ekadandi Swamis are mostly found of the Himalayas, but the Vaishnava sannyasis are found of Vrindavan and Puri. The Vaishnava sannyasis are Narottamas, whereas the Mayavadi sannyasis are Dhiras. Maharaj Dhritarashtra was advised to follow the Dhira because at the stage it was difficult for him to become a Narottama. Any devotee want to read? Hare Krishna. Anyone want to volunteer? Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, may I?
Okay, yes, ma'am. You can.
अजातशत्रुकर्तामेत्रो हुताग्निर्विभ्रान्नत्वा चिनागो भूमिरुक्मैः गृहं प्रविष्टो गुरुवन्दनाय नाचापश्यत् पितारो सौबलिं च. Translation: Maharaj Yudhishthir, whose enemies were whose was never born, performed his daily morning duties by praying, offering fire sacrifice to the sun god, and offering obeisances, grains, cows, land, and gold to the Brahmanas. He then entered the palace to pay respects to the elderly. However, he could not find his uncles and aunt, the daughter of the king Subal. But Maharaj Yudhishthir was the most pious king because he personally practiced daily the pious duties for the householders. The householders are required to rise early in the morning, and after bathing they should offer respect to their deities at home by prayers, by offering fuels in the sacred fire, by giving the Brahmanas in charity land, cows, grains, gold, etc., and at last offering to the elderly members due respects and obeisances. One who is not prepared to practice injunctions prescribed in the Shastras cannot be a good man simply by book knowledge. Modern householders are practiced to different modes of life, namely to rise late and then take bad tea without any sort of cleanliness and without any purificatory practices as mentioned above. The household children are taken to practice what the parents practice, and therefore the whole generation glides towards hell. Nothing good can be expected from them unless they associate with sadhus. Like Dhritarashtra, the materialistic person may take lessons from a sadhu like Vidura and thus be cleansed of the effects of modern life. Maharaj Yudhishthir, however, could not find in the palace his two uncles, namely Dhritarashtra and Vidur, along with Gandhari, the daughter of King Subal. He was anxious to see them and therefore asked Sanjaya, the private secretary of Dhritarashtra. Shloka 32. तत्र सञ्जयम् आशीनं पाप्रच्योद्विग्नमानसः गावल्गणित्वा नष्टातो वृद्धो हिनश्च नेत्रयो. Translation: Maharaj Yudhishthir, full of anxiety, turned to Sanjay, who was sitting there, and said, "O Sanjay, where is our uncle who is old and blind?" Shloka 33. Amba chahata putrartha पितृव्याक्वा गताश्रिता अपि मये अकृता प्रश्ने हता बन्धु स भार्यया आसस्सम्मानसामलं गङ्गयं दुःखितोपतत्. Translation: Where is my well-wisher uncle Vidur and mother Gandhari, who is very afflicted due to all her sons' demise? My uncle Dhritarashtra was also very mortified due to the death of all his sons and grandsons. Undoubtedly, I am very ungrateful. Did he therefore take my offences very seriously and, along with his wife, drown himself into the Gangas? But the Pandavas, especially Maharaj Yudhishthir and Arjuna, anticipated the after effects of the battle of Kurukshetra, and therefore Arjuna declined to execute the fighting. The fight was executed by the will of the Lord, but the effects of family aggrievement as they had thought of it before, had come to be truths. Maharaj Yudhishthir was always conscious of the great plight of his uncle Dhritarashtra and aunt Gandhari, and therefore he took all possible care of them in their old age and aggrieved conditions. When therefore he could not find his uncle and aunt in the palace, naturally his doubt arose, and he conjectured that they had gone down to the water of the Ganga. He thought himself ungrateful because when the Pandavas were fatherless, Maharaj Dhritarashtra has given them all royal facilities to live, and in return he had killed all Dhritarashtra's sons in the battle of Kurukshetra. As a pious man, Maharaj Yudhishthir took into account all his unavoidable misdeeds, and he never thought of the misdeeds of his uncle and company. Dhritarashtra had suffered the effects of his own misdeeds by the will of the Lord, but Maharaj Yudhishthir was thinking only of his own unavoidable misdeeds. That is the nature of a good man and devotee of the Lord. A devotee never finds fault with others, but tries to find his own and thus rectify them as far as possible.
So here we can understand that how the devotee is a karunamai, like his heart is filled with karuna. Uh, Yudhishthira Maharaj knows that they didn't did any mistake. Pandavas didn't did any mistake, but still, he was regretting that maybe because of me, my uncle and aunt left and everything. So we should understand that the Vaishnavas are never judgy people. They never judge people according to their work and whatever we are doing. They understand our emotions, and according to that they help us. The Vaishnavas are known as Paradukha Dukhi and Parasukha Sukhi. So we should not think that all Vaishnavas are like that. There are three types of Vaishnavas: Uttama, Madhyama, and then the last comes Kanishthadikari. So according to the three types of Vaishnava, we should behave everyone. We should. My mentor used to say that we have to use discrimination power amongst the Vaishnavas, like which Vaishnava possess the good qualities and which Vaishnava, even though they are good, but they are facing some kind of their papa karma. Because of that they're behaving like that. So if we feel that this Vaishnava is not very not in Gen Z terms, if this Vaishnava is not matching my vibe, my mentor said you should stay away from that Vaishnava and you should be very respectful for that Vaishnava. We should not commit offense. We should also think that maybe the person may be suffering from some kind of illness, not material but spiritual illness. So first thing we should understand that the Vaishnava is always a merciful, karunamai. And second thing, all the Vaishnavas are not same. We should use our discrimination power among the Vaishnavas also, to cherish our bhakti properly. So this is the greatness of Uttama Adhikari Vaishnava. We can see that how Maharaj Yudhishthira was regretting that because of me, my uncle, aunt left me, even though knows that his uncle was very crooked, because he supported his son, crooked son, who did all kind of things. He gave a Bhima poison, everything, a lot of things they did, but still he never find a fault in his uncle. He still think his fault that because he is not taking good care of his uncle and aunt, they left him.
पितारे उपराते पाण्डव सर्वान् शूद्रशिशून् अराक्षतां व्यासानतः पितृभ्यो कपागतापितः. When my father Pandu fell down and we were all small children, these two uncles gave us protection from all kinds of calamities. They were always our good well-wishers. Alas, where have they gone from here?
Sutavach.
Shuta,
Continue, Mother, continue.
Shutavacha कृपया स्नेह वैक्लव्यात् सुतो विरहकर्षितः आत्मेश्वरम् अचाप्सनो नाप्रार्थ्य Yahatipi Sutta Goswami said, because of compassion and mental agitation, Sanjaya, not having seen his own master Dhritarashtra, was aggrieved and could not properly reply to Maharaj Yudhishthir. Purport. Sanjay was the personal assistant of Maharaj Dhritarashtra for a very long time, and thus he had the opportunity to study the life of Dhritarashtra. And when he saw at last that Dhritarashtra has left home without his knowledge, his sorrows had no bound. He was fully compassionate towards Dhritarashtra because in the game of the battle of Kurukshetra, King Dhritarashtra had lost everything, men and money, and at last the king and the queen had to leave home in utter frustration. He studied the situation in his own way because he did not know that the inner vision of Dhritarashtra has been awakened by Vidur, and that therefore he had left home in enthusiastic cheerfulness for a better life after, after departure from the dark well of home. Unless one is convinced for a better life after renunciation of the present life, one cannot stick to the renounced order of life simply by artificial rest or staying out of the home.
So any other devotee want to volunteer? Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Okay. One is there. Shilpa Mataji or anyone else? Okay, Mataji. Continue.
I'm actually in between cooking, Prabhu. That's why I'm hearing. I'm not
Okay,
able to do. Sorry.
okay, Prabhuji. Okay, Mataji, continue.
Vimragyashrinu पाणिभ्यायम् विष्टभ्यात्मानं आत्मना अजातशत्रुं प्रत्युचे प्रभो पाण्डव अनुस्मरन्. Translation. First, he slowly pacified his mind by intelligence, and wiping away his tears and thinking of the feet of his master Dhritarashtra, he began to reply to Maharaj Yudhishthir.
Mataji, you want to continue or I should, start? No? Are you okay to continue?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay.
Sanjay Vacha Naham Veda Vyavasthitam Pitrorva Kulanandana Gandharya Va Mahabaho Moshitosmi Mahatmabhi. Translation. Sanjay said, my dear descendant of the Kuru dynasty, I have no information of the determination of your two uncles and Gandhari. O king, I have been cheated by those great souls. Purpose. That great souls cheat others may be astonishing to know, but it is a fact that great souls cheat others for a great cause. It is said that Lord Krishna also advised Yudhishthira to do so, and it was also for a great cause. The Lord wanted it, and therefore it was a great cause. Satisfaction of the Lord is the criteria. Perfection of life is to satisfy the Lord by one's occupational duty. That is the verdict of the Gita in Bhagavatam. Dhritarashtra and Vidura, followed by Gandhari, did not disclose their determination to Sanjaya, although he was constantly with Dhritarashtra as his personal assistant. Sanjay never thought that Dhritarashtra could perform any act without consulting him. But Dhritarashtra going away from home was so confidential that it could not be disclosed even to Sanjay. Sanatan Goswami also cheated the keeper of the prison house while going away to see, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and similarly Raghunath Das Goswami also cheated his priest and left home for good to satisfy the Lord. To satisfy the Lord anything is good, for it is in relation with the absolute truth. We also had the same opportunity to cheat the family members and leave home to engage in the service of Srimad Bhagavatam. That cheating was necessary for a great cause, and there is no loss for any party in such transcendental project.
So there are three type of rules. One is karma rule, dharma rule, and of course the dharma rule is higher than the karma rule. But then is there is something which is higher than a dharma rule, that is bhakti rule. In bhakti, we only care to satisfy the senses of Rishikesha. That's it. So we can do anything to please him. By hook or crook, a devotee should be very intelligent to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We should know how to please them. Uh, at least we should practice our basic sadhana, which is chanting 16 rounds, reading Srila Prabhupada's books, and attending classes like this, and showing great gratitude to Ishawata Prabhu, who is conducting these beautiful classes.
Shloka 38. अथा जगाम भगवान् नारदा साहतुं गुरुः प्रत्युत्थायाभिवाद्यः सानुजोग्याचलं मुनिम्. Translation. While Sanjay was thus speaking, Sri Narada, the powerful devotee of the Lord, appeared on the scene carrying his tumburi. Maharaj Yudhishthir and his brothers received him properly by getting up from their seats and offering obeisances. Purport. Devrishi Narada is described herein as Bhagwan due to his being the most confidential devotee of the Lord. The Lord and his very confidential devotee are treated on the same level by those who are actually engaged in the loving service of the Lord. Such confidential devotees of the Lord are very much dear to the Lord because they travel everywhere to preach the glories of the Lord in different capacities and try their utmost to convert the non devotees of the Lord into devotees in order to bring them to the platform of sanity. Actually, a living being cannot be a non devotee of the Lord because of his constitutional position. But when one becomes a non devotee or non believer, it is to be understood that the person concerned is not in a sound condition of life. The confidential devotee of the Lord treat such illusioned living beings, and therefore they are most pleasing in the eyes of Lord. The Lord says in the Bhagavad Gita that no one is dearer to him than one who actually preaches the glory of the Lord, who convert the non-believers and non-devotees. Such personalities as Narad must be offered all due respects, like those offered to the personality of Godhead himself and Maharaj Yudhishthira, along with his noble brothers, were examples for others in receiving a pure devotee of Lord like Narad, who had no other business save and except singing the glories of the Lord along with his veena, a musical string instrument. Shloka 39. युधिष्ठिरवाच नाहं वेद गतिं पित्रोर् भगवान् क्व गतावितः अम्बवा हतः पुत्रार्थ क्वा गता च तपस्विनी. Translation. Maharaj Yudhishthir said, O godly personalities, I do not know where my two uncles have gone, nor can I find my ascetic, ascetic
And
aunt who is grief stricken by the loss of all her sons. Maharaj Yudhishthir, as a good soul and devotee of the Lord, was always conscious of the great loss of his aunt and her sufferings as an ascetic. An ascetic is never disturbed by all kinds of sufferings, and that makes him strong and determined on the path of spiritual progress. Queen Gandhari is a typical example of an ascetic because of her marvelous character in many trying situations. She was an ideal woman as mother, wife, and ascetic, and in the history of the world, such character in a woman is rarely found. कर्णधारा इवापारे भगवान् परादर्शकः अथाभ्यासे भगवान् नारदो मुनिस्तमः. You are like a captain of a ship in a great ocean, and you can direct us to our destination. Thus addressed the godly personality, Dev Rishi Narada, greatest of the philosopher devotee, began to speak. There are different types of philosophers, and the greatest of all of them are those who have seen the personality of Godhead and have surrendered themselves in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Amongst all such pure devotees of the Lord, Dev Rishi Narad is the chief, and therefore he has been described herein as the greatest of all philosopher devotees. Unless one has become a sufficiently learned philosopher by hearing the Vedanta philosophy from a bona fide spiritual master, one cannot be a learned philosopher devotee. One must be very faithful, learned and renounced, and otherwise one cannot be a pure devotee. Pure devotee of the Lord can give us direction towards the other end of the nations. Devrishi Narad used to visit the palace of Maharaj Yudhishthir because the Pandavas were all pure devotees of the Lord, and Devrishi was always ready to give them good counsel whenever needed.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, should we continue or we should stop here?
Next verse, how big it is? Maybe we can stop, Prabhu. 4 minutes
Ah,
are only there, so better we'll stop here. Tomorrow we'll continue.
okay, 1.13.40.
40,
Thank you, Nishika Mataji, for volunteering today.
And thank you, Abhiram Prabhu, for taking and volunteering also. Okay. So we'll meet again tomorrow. Okay. No, not tomorrow. Saturday, Sunday we don't have. So we'll meet again on Monday. Okay. Thank you to all the devotees for joining. Hare Krishna. मंत्रा श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय,
Jai.
श्रीपाद की जय, साई गौर प्रमानंदी, हरि हरि बोल।
Hare Hare.